Start. Hello, everyone. Salam, namaste, adab, and welcome to all. Today we are going to have a very different kind of event. We have picked up a couple of our audience, a very regular senior audience, and few speakers to speak up their mind. There is no theme given. There is no title of the talk. So what I have decided to put it was reflections of the heart and of mind, of the mind. Bol ki lab azad hai tere. Whatever you think is important for you, whatever is in your thoughts or in your heart, you speak up. Everybody has been given for 10 minutes. Unfortunately, Professor Rajmohan Gandhi just sent me a regret note that since he is deep in the villages of Maharashtra, there is no connection at the time. And that's what I was suspecting. So he won't be able to join. So already 7 were there. So 6 enough. We have 1 hour. Please stick to your 10 minutes. I'm not going to stop you, but you watch your watch and or timer. And let's start as we have given in the format. I think the first speaker is Dr. Shahid Siddiqui Saab. He is a professor in Chicago, and he is very active in the community. And he will speak his mind, and let's see. It is all a very surprise today. Speaking different 6 minds will be quite challenging. So welcome, Shahid Saab, and let's start with you.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Well, to begin, the most beautiful thing we can experience is the mysterious. It's not my idea, but what Albert Einstein said. And the mysteries around us are enormous, whether within our bodies, our own cells, or in the space above us, what we see or which we may not see. But because I have been a student of molecular biology for half a century, I will talk a little bit about some of the recent excitement in molecular biology. One of the things this year, which has been approved by FDA, is a treatment for sickle cell disease. A sickle cell disease is an ailment of the blood in which the blood shape changes from regular to the sickle cell because of a mutation. And in today's molecular biology, the CRISPR technology, for which a Nobel Prize was given to Durna and others, they were able to correct the gene and introduce cells that could start making the normal globin and so cure the sickle cell. I think it's a great achievement of molecular biology that we can manipulate genes and treat diseases of genetic origin, which were unheard and even unimagined just a few years ago. Another thing that all of us have experienced recently is the messenger RNA vaccine for COVID. If you remember Dr. Fauci, who led NIH for many years and has recently retired, in 80s tried to develop a vaccine for AIDS virus. But that vaccine never came. But when the COVID came, the mRNA vaccine was able to be synthesized quickly and approved. And of course, most of us know that it really made wonders and saved millions from SARS infection and the COVID consequences. So these excitements of molecular biology are not something to give a lecture on molecular biology. What I want to then allude is to something which is much bigger than molecular biology, which is the problems that we have in our Indian subcontinent. and the problems of hatred, bigotry, uh, the issues that we see all over, and how to sort of connect these things together. And one of the things that comes to my mind is that there is a big gap between people which has existed since partition, but now uh, in recent years, this gap between people in Indian subcontinent has increased. And the reason why I've used molecular biology as an example is to show how one molecular biologist who was born in Pakistan in a small village called Raipur, which is now part of the Pakistan Multan. It used to be India at that time when he was born, about a century ago. His name was Hargobind Khorana. Hargobind Khurana was born in Multan, Raipur, Pakistan in 1922. He grew up, and in 1945 he went to England, worked on some insecticides, came to Vancouver, and then finally University of Wisconsin. And in 60s, he was able to work and understand or explain how genetic code works, which is how our DNA, that is made of 4 letters, is able to construct or able to give commands for protein synthesis, which has 20 amino acids. So how 4 letters of the DNA, ATCG, can be used to make a protein of 20 amino acids was his big contribution in deciphering the genetic code. And after that, when he moved to MIT, he was able to synthesize the first gene for transfer RNA. And that was like a basic idea for which that messenger RNA vaccine that I talked about and the CRISPR technology that came is based on how to manipulate nucleic acids. The reason I'm saying about Khorana and Pakistan and Indian subcontinent is that deep in our hearts, we would like to be in a comfort zone where we have friends, we have happiness, we can celebrate together, we can eat together, we can dance together. But somehow these barriers of culture or language or politics or history, they have somehow intervened and made our life very difficult. As one of the distinguished speakers today, Angana Chatterji, will talk to you, there are problems in Assam, there are problems in Kashmir, there are problems in many parts of India where people are being denied their basic things. And there are issues with you are a minority, if you are underprivileged, how the laws are being changed or manipulated becomes a big problem. So my big issue is that somehow we have to develop ideas how to come closer. Can we celebrate people? For example, another Nobel laureate who was born in Lahore, S. Chandrasekhar, and I think people from NASA, especially Harsh Mahasan, will realize that Chandrasekhar limit, which he won the Nobel Prize, but also he was a pioneer in many other ideas about neutron star, the black holes, and the whole telescope is named after Chandrasekhar. So what I'm trying to say is that countries, whether they are separated by geography and all that, rather than think about division, think about the common heritage that we have. Abdus Salam, for example, from Pakistan, won the Nobel Prize in theoretical physics and brought what is a weak electronic interactions at the nuclear level and extended the ideas of unified theory. So my sense is that how can we bring these things together? My own experience was that as a student, when I was in college, I graduated in physics with distinction in that, but at that very year, Khorana won the Nobel Prize in 1968. And so I was fascinated by what is this science which is giving an Indian a Nobel Prize. So I wanted to find out what is this science. And somebody said, look, this is called molecular biology, but there is no department of molecular biology in India. The closest you can go is biochemistry, which is in Aligarh. So from Delhi, I went to Aligarh and did my master's, and I was very lucky to start my career in biochemistry. But what I'm trying to say is that these pioneers who are born in small villages or isolated place, whether in India or Pakistan, Chandrasekhar's uncle C.V. Raman, he also won the Nobel Prize. He was born in Bangalore. So what I try to illustrate here is that geniuses are born everywhere, India or Pakistan, and excellence and ideas of intellect always go beyond their geographical limits. And if we go and strive to learn things and celebrate them with each other, we have a chance to understand and like each other. It's not easy. People are with a lot of prejudice. The example being that of an elephant and 7 blind men. Each one of us have our own perspective. We have our limited knowledge, our own background. But if we see the whole picture, then we realize that actually whole is something much more different than our individual perception of things. So my small request to all of us is to see the big picture and try in this atmosphere of hate, bigotry, what's going on in Middle East, for example, right now, how can we overcome this prejudice and bigotry, how we can start liking each other and start living together. And as this year ends, I wish you a very happy new year and ideas of how we can come together and celebrate. So with the background of molecular biology, talking about the Nobel laureates, talking about the division of countries on geographical lines, and bringing people together that whether it is a space for which we only see a fraction, and most of it is completely unknown, even to the best astrophysicist. We even don't know what is the origin of Big Bang. On the other hand, within our own cells, our entire genome has been sequenced. We can read every letter, but we know only 2% of what it does. 98% of the function is completely unknown. So we live in the mystery, and I enjoy the mystery. I invite all of you to enjoy this mystery and celebrate, but bring your prejudice down, bring your bigotry down, and make a case for bringing humanity together. Thank you very much for this opportunity.
Thank you, Dr. Shahid. It was really a big picture that you showed, and that the message that comes out is about bigotry and how to live together. So next person is our very senior Allegarian here in the local Washington area and very much involved in the Indian diaspora, Washington affairs, Mr. Tariq Farooqui. He used to be in the Voice of America, then later at the State Department, and now is enjoying a retired life. Tariq bhai.
Thank you very much. It is a pleasure to follow Dr. Shahid Siddiqui's excellent presentation. Mine will be a little different because Razi gave us complete freedom. So I would first review a little bit about what this body, the Indian diaspora, has done so far, and then maybe set the stage for other people to say, where we should go next. So good day, everyone. It is a pleasure to be here among such a distinguished panel to review the remarkable work of the Indian diaspora in the Washington metro area and to explore the exciting path forward. During the once-in-a-lifetime COVID pandemic, and I hope it is once in a lifetime, Dr. Raziuddin recognized the crucial need to connect the Indian diaspora, not only with the Indian subcontinent, but also with each other here. The pandemic, acting as a catalyst, highlighted this need, and the power of internet technology provided the means to bridge these gaps, resulting in the initiation of a weekly Zoom forum. Over time, this platform has become a vibrant space, hosting a myriad of voices ranging from recognized intellectuals, activists, authors, poets, journalists, playwrights, scientists, political commentators, to historians, among others. It has truly become a melting pot of diverse perspective, enriching our intellectual discourse. I'd like to acknowledge, in addition to Dr. Raziuddin, who's the brain behind this forum, I'd like to acknowledge the indispensable contributions to Dr. Rafat Hussain, who skillfully managed our Q&A sessions. It's not easy. And Mr. Faisal Beg, who provides unwavering technical support. Their efforts have been instrumental in developing a devoted following. Our listeners eagerly anticipate this weekly forum as an opportunity to engage in profound intellectual discussions. Despite encountering occasional technical glitches, such as that started today, which was fortunately nipped in the bud, this forum has not only met but exceeded its initial aspirations. Today, we stand at the juncture where we ask ourselves, where do we go from here? And I'm not going to go very far on where do we go from here. I'll leave that to other distinguished guests and also in the Q&A session. But I would say our esteemed panel will not only review the successes of this initiative, but also offer valuable insights into how we can enhance and optimize our efforts. They may delve into areas such as content, the frequency of presentations, potential funding sources, collaboration opportunities, and the diversification of a platform, even more than what it has been so far. As we collectively reflect on our achievements, the aim is to brainstorm ideas that will shape the future of this forum, making it even more impactful and accessible. I'll now pause here and make myself available during the upcoming Q&A session for further discussions. Thank you, and let's embark on this journey of reflection and innovation together. Thank you.
Thank you, Tariq Bhai. And believe me, audience, that it was not a promotional drive from my side. It seems I didn't know that he is going to speak up his mind on Indian diaspora and focus on Indian diaspora. But nonetheless, yes, he has opened a very important issue that, how to improve further. Now the next speaker is a very well-known figure here in the Indian diaspora, Mr. Raju Rajgopal, co-founder of Hindus for Human Rights. And just to refresh you all, that this is one organization which is probably the most visible organization at present among the Indian diaspora, doing wonderful job on the civil rights issue. So welcome, Raju. And the forum is yours now. Speak up your mind, please.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Razi, for those kind words. Dear friends, greetings from Berkeley, California. I think this is a very important year-end conversation that I'm happy to be part of. I like Razi's invocation of Syed Ahmad Fai's Speak, Your Lips Are Free, at a time when we all share a sense of hopelessness about where right-wing politics are taking India and the US. But many in India are afraid to speak up freely. Of course, it's humbling to be here in the presence of several distinguished speakers whose views I'm eager to hear. As for myself, I speak as an activist who has been working on human rights in India for over 3 decades. During most of that period, I spoke up as an Indian or as an Indian American, hyphenated, but seldom as a practicing Hindu. Fate, to me, has always been personal. Now, that changed in 2019 when I co-founded Hindus for Human Rights with my colleague Sunita Viswanath. Having never known her previously, our very first conversation was enough to convince me of the remarkable affinity between our thinking, especially about the urgent need for progressive Hindu voices to oppose Hindu supremacy, as well as Islamophobia and caste bigotry. We both felt that one of the biggest historical blunders by progressive Hindus post-1992 and 2002 was to cede all religious spaces to Hindu supremacists who could legitimately then claim that they were speaking for all Hindus. We both felt that since much of the hate and violence facing religious minorities and activists in India are being perpetrated in the name of Hindus, it was extremely important that Hindus who oppose Hindu supremacy be given a platform to speak their minds, however small and discouraging it might seem at the beginning. Thus was born Hindus for Human Rights, which forced me out of retirement and to less time with my family and friends. But it's been worth it. In the last 4.5 years, I feel that we have made remarkable progress in our mission, guided by justice, truth, and a quest for peace, but supported by people of all faiths and persuasions, like many of you, who instinctively see our unique role in opposing Hindu supremacy. But we've also faced many challenges. If I may, I would like to share some highlights with you this morning. Forgive me if these sound like a sales pitch, but as an activist, I'm focused mostly on the here and now with little capacity to either reflect on history or predict the future, which I hope some of you, especially, I was going to say especially Rajmohan ji, but he's not here. But what I'm left with to share with you are mere bullet points, I'm afraid. So please bear with me. We've existed for 4.5 years and we made steady progress on several fronts, and I want to just quickly share what those are. On the policy front, we have firmly planted our stake in the ground in DC as a go-to Hindu organization, a progressive and welcome alternative to the likes of Hindu American Foundation, which many people were beginning to be wary of. In 2023, we were catalysts, along with our allies, on several initiatives. A letter to President Biden on human rights concerns signed by 75 Congress members, a draft bill on Indian democracy and human rights floated by Senators Cardin, Sanders, and Murphy, renewed interest on the part of Senate Foreign Relations Committee on India's human rights record, and last but not the least, to preventing the Bangladesh genocide of years ago from being retold by the US Congress as a Hindu genocide in response to heavy lobbying by the Hindu American Foundation. Fortunately, we put a stop to that, at least for now. On the international front, we were active at the 54th session of the UN Human Rights Council in Geneva, and we stood next to Kuki activists as their Hindu allies. At the state level, we worked with many Dalit organizations in advocating for SB 403, a bill that would have unambiguously outlawed caste discrimination in California. The bill was rejected by Governor Newsom in a cash for veto scheme, underscoring that we are far from dislodging the money power of the Hindu right. I think, but we have made a pretty good start. Finally, we were the only Hindu organization that combined our advocacy in the halls of Congress with street protests and other forms of resistance when called for. For example, during PM Modi's visit, we are part of street protests with the infamous puppet heads of Modi and Biden that you may have seen, but we also brought together 10 lawmakers to boycott his visit and organize a separate human rights panel within the halls of Congress. On the organizational front and community building, we launched the HFHR chapter in UK, which has hit the ground running. HFHR Australia, New Zealand screened the Modi BBC documentary inside the parliament during his visit to Australia. Our team played a key role during Rahul Gandhi's US visit, and we were also very active in the World's Parliament of Religions in Chicago in mid-last year, which had successfully kept out Hindu supremacists, unlike the previous parliaments, which were dominated by the likes of the VHP. On research and advocacy, we are behind the scenes in supporting a network of Hindu monks in India willing to speak out against Hindu supremacy, Islamophobia, and caste bigotry. A small start, but significant nonetheless. We've been able to make our voices heard in several interfaith alliances in the US, where the Hindu right used to be the only voice. And we are continuing to produce research reports on the dangers of organizations like the VHP and the HAF in an effort to educate the broader public. On the media front, we are featured in 200 articles across various media outlets and published 27 op-eds, including Time Magazine and the Washington Post. Of course, we're proud of all these achievements with a full-time paid staff of just 4, but we're also conscious that our progress would have been much more limited if we did not identify ourselves as a faith-based organization. On the other hand, our greatest challenge has been to take our message to larger audiences in the US and in India. One reason, I think, is that we have not yet been able to craft a message that has appealed beyond a self-identified group of progressive Hindus, activists, minorities, and students in India without compromising our integrity. Another reason, of course, that you're all well aware of is the dominance of social media by the Modi government, who have in the last 7 years been successful in appealing to the worst instinct of Hindus by creating an external monster to focus on. I'm sure you have seen all these conspiracy theories about George Soros. Sometimes it appears as if they have transformed masses of argumentative Indians into masses of andhbhakts, blind followers, who seem to have suspended their own independent judgment. And in the process, WhatsApp has become the real Vishwaguru. There have been other challenges, of course, facing adversaries who, with enormous money power, traditional lack of trust in any faith-based group by our natural allies, like the Indian left and Ambedkar groups, and which we had to overcome, of course, relentless trolling and attacks, including a lawsuit against us, and more recently, direct attacks by the Modi government on our organization based on fake conspiracy theories, which has led to blocking our Twitter account in India. As we get ready for 2024, we are taking each one of these challenges as an opportunity to fine-tune our strategy. If I may, these are some of the things we are doing. We have started a series called Desh Videsh Conversations, Speaking Across the Divide. A hybrid webinar series to get out of our echo chambers and interact with our adversaries in a safe and civil space with clear rules of engagement. We have campus fellowships experiment that's going on, bringing together students from diverse backgrounds to work together on a common project. Hopefully, this will grow into something that can compete with the likes of Hindu Students' Council. We continue to focus on Mythbusters, aimed at busting dangerous myths and disinformation campaigns being spread by the Hindu right. And most importantly, we are focusing this next year on youth-based building in the diaspora by offering an active space, not just for engaging on human rights or on India, but other issues like environment, gender justice, indigenous people's rights, anti-Black racism, and so on. Speaking of youth, of course, the ongoing genocide in Gaza and the connections people are beginning to make with Zionism and Hindutva, I think is a great opportunity for us to bring on Jewish and Muslim partners that go beyond India. And hopefully that'll grow our database and bring more youth into our ambit. As we move into an election year with potentially dangerous consequences, I guess both in the US and India, I just want to leave you with just two thoughts. In my view, what we're facing in India is a regime that's far smarter and more cunning than any authoritative regime in the past that I'm aware of. It has so far been able to steadily move forward with its fascist agenda while still retaining the facade of democracy for the benefit of Biden and the rest of the world. If Modi wins in 2024, and inevitably begins to implement the last stage of the RSS BJP agenda, I think it's very likely that he will shed some of the facade, but it'll be too late when the world wakes up. Thank you all and Happy New Year.
Thank you, Raju. Thank you so much. As was expected, you laid the whole, your activism on Hindus for human rights, and we are very familiar with all those activities. And thank you so much. So next speaker is Dr. Syed Amir, a very senior fellow here in our Washington, D.C. area and within our illegal community. And he was a scientist at NIH and previous to that at Harvard. And he's going to speak up his mind. Amir bhai.
Thank you. And I appreciate the opportunity. I have not prepared a talk. Therefore, please forgive me because it sounds a little disjointed at times. Two topics which are of interest to me, and I think people in my generation who are so-called seniors. First of them is the feeling of nostalgia. In this stage in life, we have lost people like me and others, a lot of relations, a lot of friends. And we often like to think about them and think about the good times and maybe bad times. But all those people, I mean, this own community here in Washington, D.C., where we live, we have lost number of friends. It is not only that we miss them, but there is a practical problem also, because when somebody, friend of long standing, departs, then they take away the whole entire history with them, all the interactions, all the shared memories we had with them goes with it. It wasn't quite realized that this nostalgia or thinking about the past was really beneficial for us. And I think it's a recent article in Washington Post by Richard Simmer has outlined the nostalgia is indeed good for us. It's nice to go over the memories, and not only this time, but I'm just quoting, not only this time the reflection common, but can also be good for us. Psychologists are finding that nostalgia is not only universal, but also associated with better mental well-being. It can serve as an important psychological asset in our present and future. I think of my own situation. I was born in a small place in India, in Uttar Pradesh, and early memories of my growing up there are delightful. I mean, I always often think about that, and it brings pleasure to me. So this is something I wanted to bring to highlight, that nostalgia about people and relations, friends, is very healthy. At times, it does a lot of good to us. The second topic I would like to, since it is a limited time, so it's not possible to go into any details, but the second topic which I would like to address is the loneliness, the problem of loneliness in this generation. And that is not limited to people of my age or seniors. It is also now getting widespread among the young. Somebody who has highlighted or brought to focus this problem is the Surgeon General, as we all know, is Vivek Murthy. He's currently doing his second term as the Surgeon General, and he has taken upon himself to create the awareness of detrimental effect of loneliness. His own personal experience, he has related then the first term when he was appointed the Surgeon General. After he retired, he found himself lost, lonely, and not many contacts. And he found himself lost. And the reason was, he said, is that during the time he was serving as in the official post as Surgeon General, he has severed relationship that he had developed before. All the friends and which he had before taking up the post he had neglected to keep contact with them because he was too busy taking care of the official business. Resultantly, when he completed a tenure, he found he had no friends because it's not easy to find friends, and he felt very lonely, depressed, down. And then that was the time he reconnected, especially people who supported him. It was a family. And he survived by connecting with his family, and otherwise it was getting a tough life. He also, interesting example, he has given of a person in China who was 85 years old. He put an advertisement in a newspaper that he felt lonely, didn't have much contacts, although he was healthy, taking care of himself. Financially, he was fine, but he wanted the family to adopt him because he was scared to die alone in bed, to be found out by police several days later when the neighbors will complain. So happened, a lot of people offered to adopt him, and in the end, all his worst fears did not come to fruition because he died in a hospital bed surrounded by some friends and hospital staff. So it is an illustration of what the problem be, and it's worse in other countries. For example, in Japan, it is even worse because there's a growing population of elderly people and who are lonely and not have support of the family. It used to be the case before. So I remember from my own experience when I was growing up in Szechuan, the whole population was 22,000 in Badayu, and virtually everybody knew everybody. And there wasn't a sense of loneliness because there were family, friends, and all that around. And whenever there was a problem, sickness, death, whatever, there would always people around who will come and help and support. And although the best medical facilities were not available, people were not particularly affluent, but support was there. So, but situation is very different now. I also an example I find is during my graduate studies in England in the 60s. I was living near the university and with a family, actually with two brothers who had bought the house and renting to the students. They had I had a lot of friends at the university, but these people who were working people, they had a routine that after they came to work, had their dinner, they went to the pub, which was very much of an English institution. Pubs provided a milieu of social interactions. People went there, didn't have to be invited or necessarily have any great deal of friends. Once they got to the pubs, they found friends, they made friends. And they was very much helpful in providing such, as I said, social milieu. The other institution in those days was the churches. People, Sunday was people went not only who were religious, also they went as to have social experience, and provided again a place where you can connect with other people. And unfortunately, both of these to a degree have disappeared. Some of it were devastated by the pandemic 3-4 years ago. People started staying away. Pubs anyway were getting out of fashion. There's very little religious affiliations in Britain. I mean, in my days also it was the same, but people went in social interactions. But the pubs and the church is now empty. Now churches have resorted to offering their facilities for social interactions because there are not enough people coming to the services. So there's another anchor has been lost. In Britain, at least they have appointed a minister for loneliness who is a little unusual, and he was providing some support and various kind of reasons how to connect people. And one of them is to have housing, intergenerational, which means in the same housing they have young people, old people, middle-aged people, whatever interaction with that. So it's not, I'm not watching the time, so please point out to me. This loneliness is just not that we suffer through it. It's in fact.
Your last minute.
I'm sorry?
Your last minute.
Oh, last minute. Okay, thank you. All right. So this is very insidious problem because it affects our health. They said during the Great Depression, people were not lonely that much, and there was not a great deal of mortality. The rate of dying was not much higher then, although people were suffering in the Great Depression. But now, people who are lonely have a greater rate of mortality. So I will stop there. And so I just wanted to highlight these sort of problems which our generation and even younger people are suffering. And I think we might consider doing something to alleviate these problems. Thank you, and Happy New Year.
Thank you very much, Amir Bhai. This is really one issue that you raise is very important, especially these days. We see that people are really looking for some kind of assembly grounds or somewhere where they can come as a the concept of common rooms and where people can sit and talk and play and feel.
It's not a commercial, but Razi, I want to point it out that this forum, Saturday Forum, has served, is contributed towards that. Even the darkest days we were suffering from pandemic, There was always something to look forward because Saturday Forum did not put you in any danger, and you could interact with the community or connect with the community.
Thank you very much. So now the next speaker is a very senior person who has been associated with Indian diaspora for a long time. He is a very distinguished businessman, successful businessman, a distinguished scientist at NASA. He was a legislator in Karnataka Assembly, Dr. Nazeer Ahmad. He is presently in California area. So Nazeer Saab, welcome. If you are here, I guess you
Yes.
are. Gee.
Thank you, Razi Sahab. 3 cheers and 3 tears. That's my brief presentation. A cheer for humankind for its scientific achievements, and a tear for its tragedies. A cheer for the land of my birth, India, for what it preserved, a tear for what it has lost. A cheer for the land of my adoption, the United States of America, for its ideal, and a tear for the abysmal depths to which it has fallen. We live in extraordinary times. These are times when human progress is limited only by the speed of light and the human capacity to absorb change. Humankind has conquered space. Giant telescopes have lifted the curtains on space-time. The secrets of DNA are no longer secret. And we can empirically and scientifically trace our ancestry to a single person, validating that all human beings on this tiny planet are indeed brothers and sisters. We replicate human intelligence with artificial intelligence and create virtual reality to mimic true reality. At our best, we are indeed a marvelous creation, which even aspires to touch the throne of God. So one cheer for humankind for what it has achieved. To the men and women of science and philosophy, the truly greats, some with whom I had the privilege of working. While humankind has touched the moon and dreams of establishing colonies on Mars, life on Earth is far from perfect. The world stands on an inverted pyramid with enormous wealth concentrated in the hands of a few, while millions sink into poverty each year. Individual liberties shrink as autocracy, despotism, extremism, fascism, chicanery, doublespeak, and fraud take over. Falsehood rules the world. Journalists are jailed and professors silenced for speaking the truth. Yes, we live in extraordinary times, in a world raven with hate, violence, and war. A world war stares us in the face, threatening to wipe out all life on this planet that took 1 billion years to evolve. There is a genocide going on even as we speak. We are treated to the macabre dance of the devil on the canvas of time, with gory sights of infants left to die, the shattered limbs of children scattered amidst the ruins of blasted homes, dying men, women, and children denied water even to quench their thirst as they gasp for the last breath. The world looks on, and even worse, justifies the ghastly mass murders. It is Karbala every minute. Yes, a tear for the destitute children in the shanty towns of the world. The tear tinged with blood for the infants whose bodies are rent asunder by exploding bombs. As the scriptures have aptly described this dichotomy in the condition of man, behold, we created the human into the most noble of molds. Then do we abase him to be the lowest of the low. لَقَدْ خَلَقْنَا الْإِنسَانَ فِي أَحْسَنِ تَقْوِيمٍ ثُمَّ رَدَدْنَاهُ أَسْفَلَ سَافِلِينَ. Now to the land of my birth, a hearty cheer for what India has achieved in my own lifetime. Independence, a constitution that by and large endures, self-sufficiency in food, while we used to go begging for wheat in the 50s, eradication a plague and malaria, an increase in life expectancy from 40 to 70, global dominance in the IT industry and the country's space program. For me, it has been a journey from the bullock cart to satellites. No longer does the world pity us for our poverty. I remember a meeting of the Chamber of Commerce in Pasadena, California, in October 1961, to which we, the foreign students at Caltech, were invited. In my youthful naivete, I asked one of the businessmen at the meeting, "Sir, what comes to your mind when you think of India?" Came a sharp reply, "Beggars in the street." How times have changed. Today, the answer is more likely to be CEOs of major corporations. While India has grown up, it has also lost a great deal. The dominance of Hindutva in the Hindi-speaking belt of northern India has marginalized the 250 million Christians and Muslims of India and has created a conflicted democracy where the left hand is set up against the right. A spate of legislation codified under NCR, CAA, etc., keeps the minorities on edge. A triumphant majoritarianism seeks to marginalize the minorities in the social, political, and educational spheres. Even food, clothes, school uniforms, and languages come under attack. The virus has spread to the diaspora in America, where Hindus, Muslims, and Sikhs at one time celebrated Diwali, Eid, and Guru Nanak Jayanti together. Today, you're treated to the sight of a bulldozer, as has happened in New Jersey. Yes, a sorrowful tear for the land of my birth, for what it has lost and where it is headed. A cheer, too, for the land of our adoption, the United States of America. We acknowledge with gratitude that this country took us in, educated us at some of the best universities in the world, gave us the opportunity to live in peace, work, compete, and prosper. Education and wealth have empowered the Indian diaspora to penetrate the barriers of race, ethnicity, and culture. We salute this land for the loftiness of its ideals, the openness, inclusiveness, and acceptance of its society. While we celebrate the ideals of this great country, the cheer turns to a tear when we look at what it has become.
You're frozen. What happened? Nazeer Saab?
If it's frozen, he can't hear. Let's see if it comes back. Go back, see. Yeah, it's frozen.
I think he has to buy a new setup. I don't know. Okay, so what to do? It was so abrupt.
He's not there too.
No, Rafat, so what we should do? Move on?
Yeah, move on and probably we can come back.
Okay, so let's move on because we don't want to lose the time. Maybe if he comes back, he can respond later on.
Yeah,
So let me ask now, our next speaker is Dr. Angana Chatterji, a very well-known figure. She is a senior researcher, anthropologist at University of Berkeley. She is so much well-known in the arena of all the civil rights and human rights activities, and so many articles, so much activities that she's seen with. Dr. Angana Chatterji, please speak up your mind for 10 minutes. Are you here?
yeah.
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes, of course, of course.
Lovely.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Raji Sahab, for the kind introduction always. And if Dr. Ahmed comes back, then I can yield to him so he can finish. So just please let me know. I'm really grateful to listen to all of you and what you spoke of from the heart, things that impassion you, things that concern you in this moment. I wanted to speak just very briefly. I'm mindful of the clock. I just wanted to speak very briefly to say that this has been a despairing year. Most years in my line of work as an anthropologist are somewhat despairing given what I do, at least since, I don't know, 2002 or even before. But the build-up of the Hindu right and the majoritarian government and state in India, witnessing how violence is become sort of a permanent state there, especially seeing its new experimentation since 2022, has been extremely distressing. This year, I had the privilege of speaking with survivors and community leaders, prolific individuals in Manipur and in Haryana, in Nu, for example, and learning from them the enormity of the violence, the enormity of the hatred that confronted them, that broke their lives, that battered their communities, that ravaged them in every sense, physical, spiritual, economic, political, how recourse, legal and otherwise, has not been available. And most of all, what it feels like to be breaking from the inside. Muslim communities in India and Christian communities, members of Dalit communities, Adivasi communities, Sikh communities, farmers, women who are destitute, women who are vulnerable, LGBT communities. The list is very, very long. And the sense, particularly I wish to speak here of communities, the Kuki-Zo Christian community, indigenous Christian community in Manipur, and the Muslim community in Nu. I wanted to just speak about my understanding of their predicament at this moment. And we've read the figures, we've seen the damage that has been caused. In many places, it's been portrayed as the violence before the violence, so that the violence itself has not ended. It's sort of a violence for something larger that is to come. We've witnessed the build-up of the Hindu right. We've witnessed the staggering impunity with which state officials, with which elected officials, with which law enforcement personnel stand by and enable Hindu mobs into battering and bulldozing communities. And I mean literally and figuratively. When I speak with men and women there, one of the things that has stayed with me so painfully this year is their sense of what is breaking. And I've been talking to people in Assam as well, Bangla Muslims in particular, who are casualties of presumptive statelessness by the Citizenship Amendment and citizenship that privileges Hindus. The breakage of their history, the breakage of their contribution, the evisceration in skin and bone of who they are and how fundamentally a land that is theirs, a history that is theirs, from which they are being separated forcefully. And I've spoken to many people also of Hindu descent who agree with me that the circumstances are horrific, that this is a government deeply rooted in authoritarian and fascist ideologies. But at the same time, they often do not believe that there is a movement on the ground that is galloping quite fast. I would assert that there is, and I think we need to be more aware than we are. We need to be more concerned than we are. We need to be more distressed than we are, because the cadre of the Hindu right, in my estimation and per my research, numbers tens of millions. And silence is a form of complicity, silence of dominant Hindus, silence of people who feel that by keeping quiet, they might be safe from the dominant community. I think those are forms of complicity that we need to stop. I think dissent remains one of the most prolific contributions of India even today. People who are most affected are the ones also taking to the streets, asking that this is not okay, this is not acceptable. Journalists, lawyers, students, incarcerated, broken, brutalized, losing their jobs, still persisting. I wish to name here my friend, dear friend and colleague Khurram Pervez, who remains in arbitrary detention, a prolific Kashmiri human rights defender, without bail, without a hearing, and he remains incarcerated since 2021 November. I wish to name here as well the colonial violence perpetrated by India on Kashmir and its continuance, and the dastardly judgment read by members of the Supreme Court with no dissenting opinion on Article 370 and what that means, and their request that there be a truth and reconciliation. But truth and reconciliation without cessation of hostilities, without Kashmiris being able to determine their own future, without reparation, without the guarantee of the right to non-repetition of what is played down in Kashmir, means nothing. It simply means that we are asking Kashmiris to accept what has happened to them and to move on. So all of these things are what should concern us, what concerns me deeply. I also want to say just for a moment that solidarity with the unimaginable horror unfolding in Gaza, solidarity with Palestinians there, how terrifying the crisis, and how terrifying to see a people who had been brutalized, like when we study the 1920s and 30s and 40s. It is unimaginable how such brutality could have taken place, perpetrated by Europeans and Germans on the Jews, and to see how cycles of violence, because we fail to address them, repeat and repeat and repeat and produce monsters of people who has once been victimized, are reproduced as monsters, as the ones that they sought to escape. And that is exactly what we are seeing the Israeli state repeat today, and how terrifying that is. And I think also as a citizen of India, I am aware that we have not dealt with our histories, and what I'm afraid of where we are headed should we not take seriously what is happening in Israel's war on Gaza, to be mindful of the work that we need to do to show up with any hope for justice in the future. This is not particularly cheerful, but I wish all of you a year that is to come in which maybe there is less political heartbreak. I wish you moments of joy. And most of all, I hope that our alliances will grow, that our differences will be those that we welcome and try to listen more carefully to each other. And I hope that we will keep showing up the best we can and the strongest we can. Thank you so much for having me today.
Thank you so much, Angana ji. You know, it is a wonderful whenever you come and talk. It gives a big broader picture, but at the same time, it raises our hopes also that, you know, we can strive, we can try to do better than what we are. Since after you was the turn for Professor Rajmohan Gandhi, and he couldn't join, I took the liberty to invite a very senior intellectual of our community, Professor Vinod Mobai, to speak for a few minutes in place of Professor Rajmohan Gandhi, not on his behalf, but on his as Vinod Mumbai said. Mumbai ji, आप हैं?
जी
जी, please.
दुआ
आप लेट आए थे, तो बहुत सी चीजें आपने ग्रैस्प नहीं की होंगी, but you speak your mind for 5, 6, 7 minutes, and you have at least heard the speeches of few of them. Thank you.
जी बहुत बहुत शुक्रिया. Thank you. It was bit last minute because I'm not was not planning to join, but it's a great honor to be in such distinguished company as Raju Rajgopal, Angana Chatterji ji, and others who have spoken here. So you just asked me to speak my mind and heart. Didn't prepare anything, but I'd like to, when the announcement came, it was a verse of Faiz Saab that you had, Bol ke lab azad hain tere, बोल जुबान अब तक तेरी है. अभी तक तो मेरी जुबान है, अब आगे शायद कोई उसको छीन ले तो दूसरी बात है. सो माहौल आजकल बेइंसाफी और ऑटोक्रेसी जिसको कहते हैं चल रहा है, एंड पीपल हैव referred to it. So what I'd like to do for just 2 minutes is to recite another verse of Faiz that has a bearing on what some of us are doing to resist that autocracy, that violence and the era of injustice, especially जो कत्ले-आम गजा में चल रहा है, the genocide that is being enacted and the helplessness, as it were, of the powerful world powers to stop it, that is also a major factor and has been referred to. So let me recite these few lines of Faiz, and then hopefully that gives an idea of where we come from, as it were. So he says, हम परवरिशे लौहो कलम करते रहेंगे, जो दिल पे गुजरती है रकम करते रहेंगे, असबाब गमे इश्क बहम करते रहेंगे, वीरानिए दौरां पे करम करते रहेंगे. Now, 2 important lines. हाँ, तलखिए अयाम अभी और बढ़ेगी. हाँ, अहले सितम मशके सितम करते रहेंगे. मंजूर ये तलखी ये सितम हमको गवारा, दम है तो मुदावाए अलम करते रहेंगे. एक तर्ज़े तगाफुल है सो वो उनको मुबारक, एक अर्ज़े तमन्ना है तो हम करते रहेंगे. So the poet says that the poisons of this age will continue to grow, and tyrants will continue to practice their tyranny. I understand the grief and the violence, and I take it into account, but as long as I have breath, I will keep on fighting for a better world. And if the world doesn't like it or has a different opinion, let them do what they feel like. It is my urge, so I will keep on doing what I want to do, which is to present a better, to make a better world. So this is another of Faiz's iconic poems, one can say, and it resonates with what others are trying to do, what my friend Raju has been doing with Hindus for Human Rights, which is taking on a very major role. We have a small publication for many years called Insaf Bulletin that we keep producing for over 20 years. And I think some of you may be aware of it. We keep as a monthly e-zine or an electronic circulated on internet. And I think that's all we can keep doing as individuals who are located here. I think Raju referred to the attacks that the current regime in India is trying to stop, not only what dissent is there inside the country, but dissent outside too. And that is a very dangerous trend that they have started to indulge in. Let's hope that the law agencies abroad can make sure that such things are not repeated by, by the regime. On these few words, I would like to leave you with the wishes for a safe, healthy, and hopefully happier 2024 for all of you. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you very much, Vinodji. You effectively substituted a very another, famous Gandhian. So it was a session basically meant for speaking up your mind. So I hope that all of you speakers have spoken of your mind, but nonetheless, that gave us a lot of messages, and the dominant message that comes is that the world is really not a perfect world. There are a lot of problems here, but what we have to do, instead of sitting at home and crying, we have to participate to make a difference and change this world. I hope that we have taken some messages and hope that some of you will raise some questions. So this next phase will be for the question and answer session, which will be moderated by Dr. Rafat Hussain. But before that, he is going to show you next Saturday's event, which is on Ghalib. This is a wrong, I think we have given a new poster, a modified poster. I just sent, but probably Rafat couldn't get it. Anyway, it is Ghalib Ki Ahmiyat. The poster is there with the Urdu script also in the right format. Ghalib Ki Ahmiyat, and it will be, the two speakers are Gohar Raza, a very famous scholar, intellectual in India on, as well as the activist. We will be joined by Suhail Hashmi, and there will be a couple of ghazal rendition by a very famous singer, Mannu Kohli, who is trained in Hindustani classic music. She has participated with Danish Iqbal earlier also. So coming week will be on Ghalib Ki Ahmiyat. Now over to Rafat Saab for the question and answer session. Just remind you all that because of certain abnormal movement and activities today, I have taken all the precautionary measures. Some bad apples or elements were here on the forum. They have been removed. I'm sure all the names I can remember. I can identify now. So I will open some security things, like you can unmute yourself. You can show your picture also. And Rafat will take some question or comments if you want. Okay. So unmute themselves. And
okay.
Start with
Thank you, Razi Bhai. So before we begin the session, the question and answer session, so let me thank all the speakers, Dr. Shahid Siddiqui, Tariq Farooqui Saab, Raju Rajgopal Saab, Syed Amir, Dr. Syed Amir, and Vinod Mubai Saab, Angana Chatterji, and of course Nazeer Ahmad Saab, although we had some technical difficulties and he has dropped out. Otherwise, we would have given him a chance to finish his talk. So the session is open for question and answer. You can raise your digital hand and please point out who do you want to ask the question. And you may also put your request in the chat section. So let's begin. Shahid Saab want to say something.
Yes. First of all, I want to thank and all those who are here, especially the distinguished speakers, Raju Rajgopal Sahab, Angana Chatterji जी, विनोद मुंबई साहब, सैयद आमिर साहब, और हम नहीं सुन सके पूरी तरह, लेकिन मैं सबका मशकूर हूँ। ये बहुत अच्छा ये प्रोग्राम रहा और हम बहुत खुश हैं कि ये डायस्पोरा का प्रोग्राम इतना इफेक्टिव है और बड़ी बात है। ये जो बात अभी हुई है नाउमीदी की और जिसके बारे में फैज की,
I said speak in English only because there are other participants who cannot understand.
can you hear?
Yeah,
No,
we
no,
can hear you.
speak in English rather than Urdu.
Okay,
because-
so right. So the idea is that somehow we have to have a positive way. I mean, as Mother Teresa said, if you cannot feed 100 people, try to feed one. So I understand the challenges in Gaza or in India or throughout the world are enormous. But what Angana Chatterji is doing or what Raju Rajgopal Sahab is doing is a very big thing. I mean, just to have Urdu couplet, जुल्मत शब के गिले से तो कहीं बेहतर था, अपने हिस्से की कोई शम्मा जलाते जाते। तो अंधेरे तो बहुत हैं, there is a lot of darkness, but even one source of light is sufficient to lead somewhere. And I thank like Raju Rajgopal Sahab, Angana Chatterji, who are really making it possible to go for the voice of the and challenging the very strong regimes and autocracy which is around us. And so I want to congratulate Dr. Raziuddin for bringing this forum together and giving opportunity of talking on such serious matters in wonderful way. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you so much. Let me see if there is any hand raised. I don't see any.
No hand raised. The speakers were very active in raising their hands in other events, so they have become the speakers. So there are not much questions coming.
Yeah, let me see if there is anything in chat.
This is Imtiaz Uddin. I find chat has been disabled, at least on my computer. I would like to thank all the speakers this morning. They have made excellent presentation. I enjoyed listening to them very much. Thank you all.
Thank you, Imtiaz Saab. Let me see if Nazeer Saab is back.
First,
No, he's not.
but this from basement, this is yours building.
Okay.
Huh?
There is some issues, Rafat, he cannot probably rejoin.
Yeah. Abdul Jabbar Saab.
All right. I think remarkable discussion today.
I think overhead too.
Some
Because
crosstalk.
you just put a stage something there. You can hold it like that.
Okay, I am going to
Reading or
mute
something.
some of you.
So
So
you can throw it in the overhead.
if you have to speak, please unmute yourself because there is a background chat going on. So, okay, go ahead, Jabbar Saab.
So thank you. So, like I said, it is a remarkable presentation by on very topics. It's a real treat to listen to each one of them, the speakers. For me, as somebody who has been here in this country 43 years ago, like Dr. Ahmad was talking about 3 tiers, and 3 tiers. I kind of feel the same way, having lived in this place so long, for more than 4 decades. So at the same time, I think we have made progress. I think we are all in this world together. We have, I've been reading, communicating with a lot of through the. I don't know how much time I have. First of all, I don't talk. I always ask questions.
So you are welcome to ask question, Jabbar Saab.
Okay. So No, I don't have any question. I think it's in my own mind whether we became our own problems. That's always the case. In my case, my understanding of reading about some of the great scholars, starting from even the Prophet Muhammad. So we are the world. Are we blaming other people for our own indeficiencies, our own imperfections? That is my question. All right, I'm done.
Thank you, Jabbar Saab. Iltafat Saab.
Hello.
Thank you,
Yeah.
Rafat. I don't know who to ask this question, so it's a general question for all the speakers. But by the way, thanks a lot to all the speakers for wonderful talks. India is doing very well economically, and I feel Modi has been in power for more than 10 years now. I think a lot of India's success is attributed to Modi's policies. And all the hatred he has sowed against minorities. Somehow, I think the people in India are relating it to the success of India. And I think chances are he will be elected next year again. So I would request any of the distinguished speakers to talk about the potential for Modi coming back to power and this correlation between India's economic success with his policies. Thank you.
Thank you, Iltafat Saab.
I think Angana ji can take up this question if she is willing to.
Certainly, I'll speak very briefly to it. I think India's success is something that economic success, our analysis or assessment of that needs to be mediated by asking the question, who is successful and who is doing well and who is not? Because during COVID and after, we've seen hundreds of thousands, millions of people actually, their economic sanctity be quite eviscerated. So I also think that certain points of success that have to do with militarization may be economically fruitful, but they are not socially fruitful. They are not something that a country should be prioritizing. As well as in Indian-administered Kashmir, where Kashmiris understand themselves to be under an occupation, any success that India can claim economic from there is happening at the cost of actually dispossessing a people. So I think one needs to be very careful in how we assess these points of success. Also, what Mr. Modi has claimed to be success, whether it is, for example, the Narmada Dam, which has been witness to millions of people being actually displaced and dispossessed, that he has claimed as a success of his making, actually. So there's also, one needs to go through carefully and pass out what are lies and what actually are successes. So I would simply urge caution. And I think also in terms of neoliberal economics and its capacity to address the needs and issues of India, I think one needs a careful analysis and a reframing. Secondly, to your point about the elections, yes, it looks like the BJP is very well positioned. There is the India Alliance, and there is hope that in certain areas, district by district, or even in certain states, that the BJP perhaps can be weakened. Unless something incredible happens for the BJP to lose at this point, which would be obviously the desired outcome, but we have to wait and see if that's a possibility. But for them to be weakened remains a possibility if the coalition stands strong and if the right kind of investments are made into both the electoral processes, but also we need to have an analysis of what free and fair elections mean, because people are frightened, people are unable to vote in various places. Even if there are not the direct rigging of votes, there are different ways to influence the electoral machinery. So those are all things that should concern us. I'll stop now.
Thank you. Haider Ali Saab. Before we go for Haider Ali Saab, Raju Rajgopal Saab wants to add something.
Yes. Yeah, very quickly. I think Angana has put it succinctly in terms of whose economic success we're talking about. I'm not an economist. What I do have is anecdotal evidence of what's happening to ordinary people with the cost of living. And I think Chennai floods recently was a great example where people in a moment lost everything they had. They will probably spend the next 10 years rebuilding their lives. For them, talking about GDP and talking about the economic success of Modi is vacuous, in my view. All I have is anecdotal evidence. But I do want to talk a little bit about what was brought up by the questionnaire about this idea that somehow people in the diaspora and the Western countries are jealous of India. I think it's a very far-fetched conspiracy theories are being floated to make it look like people like us who love India, who have worked hard working with the poor people for long, somehow suddenly began hating India because of Modi. I think we should dismiss that notion. I know it's being brought up by a lot of people, including by some of our relatives, but it's such an insidious accusation that we should dismiss it right away. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you both. Syed Haider Saab.
Yes, this is for everyone, because a general question that if economic benefits are not evenly available to all, then Darwin's law, survival of the fittest, comes to play and violence becomes inevitable. Is it the fate we have to face, that violence will always be there?
Okay, who wants to take it?
Yeah, I would like to address that. I don't think that Darwinian evolution has something to do with how societies behave. Darwinian evolution may explain how some genetic mutations might give to survival of the fittest, but societies don't work just on those. Societies are made of individuals which have brains, and these brains have a capacity to reflect, to analyze, to integrate, to go into history and see the future. And therefore, it's not as simple as survival of the fittest. You have to learn from the history. You have to see the consequences of your action, the law of karma, what is happening in Gaza, what is happening in India, will come back to haunt. It's not something that anybody with a fascist attitude or anything can prevail forever. History has shown again and again that it's a time of cusp and rise and fall, and therefore it's not necessary that Darwinian law will continue in one direction. There are checks and balances, and it will happen. It may take time, it may have a bigger sacrifice or something, but my contention is that society corrects itself one way or the other. Of course, it needs people like Angana Chatterji, it needs people like Raju Rajgopal and others of like-minded who can fight for it, who can sacrifice their time and make it possible for underdogs or underprivileged to be known, to come to a level where their problems are shared by other people and understood. Even one person can make a difference. Mahatma Gandhi's example is there. He was a simple man, but he took a aim against colonial power of British and was successful. So we have a history of that it was not, I mean, remember Jallianwala Bagh was not so different from what is happening in Gaza today, but the history says that Jallianwala Bagh is not a permanent legacy of India. It's a bad thing in our history, but it is a past thing. So I don't believe that Darwinian evolution has something to do with what we see in the future. I'm very hopeful for the future, especially for the people who have a positive mind. Thank you.
Raju Saab. Raju Saab, please go ahead. You raised hand.
Yes, I just want to add first of all, thank you, Dr. Siddiqui, for your words about some of the work we're doing. I just want to reflect a little bit on this idea that we've all grown up with, that truth ultimately prevails over evil, and society has a capacity to self-correct. I think the issue is how many generations it takes for that self-correction. If you look at Israel, for example, they've basically changed the mindset of the younger generation, where truth is something that changes from generation to generation. That's what they're focusing on. What today's younger people in Israel believe is very different from what we know about the history of 1947. So when truth itself is fungible, I'm less of a believer in that, in the adage that truth ultimately succeeds. It's a question of whose truth it is. And today, I'm actually afraid that's exactly the pathway that Hindutva is taking India to create a new generation which will completely forget the independence movement and maybe think that Savarkar was the leader of the independence movement. And there's nothing we can do to change that. And that is the biggest danger of the next election, is they get another 5 years to institutionalize and change the curricula, new education policy, everything aimed at changing the story for the next generation. And there is nothing we can do to change that. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
My reaction to that is the love conquers hate. I agree that truth is a very far-fetched thing. It may not happen in our lifetime. Not easy to talk to youth so easily. But love is the motivating force of universe. I'll just again use one couplet. The couplet is, ilm barbat hai, amal mizrab hai, naghma hai ishq. Ilm barbat hai, amal mizrab hai, naghma hai ishq. Zarra zarra karama hai, ishq khizre karama. Ilm is part of the musical instrument. Mizrab is part how you play that. And the melody that comes out this musical instrument is love. And love is the guiding force of the universe. Even love, we will conquer it all. How much hate, how much falsehood may be there, love wins.
All right, good.
Very well said.
Good.
Okay.
Thank you.
Angana Saiba.
I just wanted to say one thing, that I think how we learn to love has to do with what is around us, the world that is around us, in which we are taught how to love, what we love. And like Raju, I share with Raju very much the concern that that world is changing. And I've seen sort of what just 10, 15 years can do in India on the ground, where Hindu activists, Hindu nationalists have been extremely diligent in trying to create a context that is vitiated. Memory is not something we live with that is ready-made, right? Memory also exists in context, what we remember, what we choose to remember, what we choose to forget. So through language, through culture, through food, through music, through history, through rewriting curricula, through infiltrating into institutions, something far more insidious that is happening that is equally dangerous and violent. Because, for example, if Mr. Modi were not in power today, we would still have a gigantic task before us of reclaiming, I don't want to romanticize what was before either, because let's not forget the decades before Narendra Modi that led to the creation of this. Let's not forget that so many of the laws that he's using to brutalize people were actually instituted by other political parties. So not to romanticize, but also to remind us that going ahead, what we would need to build, what we would need to rethink, rememory, is daunting. Just that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Vinod sir.
Ji, I would just like to briefly point out that this notion of economic success that is spread by part of the newspaper industry. In India, it's of course, the newspaper industry is mostly become a Godi media, a lapdog that puts forward any story the government wants. There are a few channels that challenge that narrative. And in fact, the unemployment figures in India, which are horrendous, show that if you read Center for Monitoring Indian Economy reports, you will find that the true story is somewhat different. In the West here, that story is spread by business groups who want to go to India as an alternative investment destination rather than China, which was their place in the past. So one has to treat this kind of narrative or this discourse about the great success under Modi with a large grain of salt, as the saying goes. In fact, yes, a few people, the top 0.1%, have made out very well, as witnessed by the growth of Adani and others. But there is a large part. In fact, the figures actually show that the poverty has not declined significantly in any way for a large majority of people. And there's a lot of suffering. The simple example is this plane that was stopped in France of hundreds of people trying to enter the US illegally. There's an entire network of travel agents that are engaged in funneling people from India, in Gujarat and Punjab especially, into the US illegally. Those stories are there also if you care to look at them. So this kind of tale that is spread of Modi's economic success, etc., as I said, has to be taken with a grain of salt. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And there are 3 digital hands raised.
But can I go out of turn just a little bit to add to what Mr. Vinod Saab just said?
Okay, please go.
It's going to be very short. Thank you very much. What Vinod Saab was just saying, it reminds me of what I read this morning about that plane and how many of them are really from Gujarat who are actually coming in, and the increase in the level of illegal immigrants from India, which was amazing to me. The numbers were amazing. And this is from Gujarat, which was supposed to be the Gujarat model for India, where the economy was doing very well, which the rest of the India was supposed to actually benefit from. So if this is happening in Gujarat, basically it reinforces what Mr. Vinod was saying, is that there is something missing in the story about this economic miracle that Mr. Modi is bringing to India versus what in reality is happening. Yes, some people have become very rich, but not everybody else. Thank you.
Thank you, Tariq bhai. Fazal Khan Saab, and after that, Victor Ghalib Saab. Fazal bhai.
Yes, Rafa, thank you for the opportunity. First, let me join others to congratulate the organizers of this program, Dr. Raziuddin, Dr. Rafat Hussain, and Faisal. Excellent program. I think, I don't know what the expectation was, but definitely for me, it has exceeded it. So thank you for continuing to organize it. Now, also, I would like to say that hope that 2024 brings better news worldwide, and we should forget about 2023. Now, talking about other things, don't forget that when you're talking about richness and the economy of India, just keep in mind that 82 crore people are on welfare. That's part of the lifeline for BJP. So that's the state of economic affairs in India. We all can feel good as an Indian, but there are issues. Now, coming back to what is happening in India with Muslims and Christians and Dalits and so on and so forth. My question is actually that, are we resisting the change? Because change is always difficult to adopt. So what we have been used to see for last, I think I'm close to 75 now, so I can say that we are used to seeing some policies in the past. And if you put yourself in the BJP shoes, I'm not talking about Hindutva, but BJP shoes, think about 75 years ago, how did they feel about what the policies were adopted by Nehru and others? Now it's a reverse. And this is the question actually just a few weeks ago, Dr. Manu Singhvi was here at one of my friend's place, and I had asked this question, and he went on and on and on. So number one, to summarize, that what is BJP doing which is different than what was done before? It may be the optics of this that looks bad. So that's related to India. The second, people brought Gaza in this and related India and Gaza. It's two different things. But let me be contrarian on this. While the optics of Gaza looks pretty bad, and rightly so, but my personal view is that I will be more concerned about Jews in a long term because of what is happening. And I quite honestly, the intellectuals on this forum, as well as others, should think about the long-term safety of Jews worldwide. So those are my question or comments as well. So anybody can take that.
Thank you.
Can I respond to Dr. Fazal, please?
Yeah, please go ahead, Shahid.
Yeah, so my response to that very particular question is that, yes, indeed, you are absolutely right. In fact, I have posted these things on LinkedIn. I'm very concerned about Jews, and largely it is because even in Israel, if you read Haaretz or Jerusalem Post, you will realize that many people in Israel are very worried about their future and the leadership of Netanyahu. And largely because it's not a viable solution to have this kind of behavior which is going on right now. And Jews have been for centuries under this fear, and that fear has not gone away. In New York, as you know, the Union Station rally, there was a significant number of Jews who were protesting the policies of Israel. So first of all, when we say Jew, like Muslims or Hindus, it's not just one body. There are many kind of thoughts and visions. And yes, the future of Jews is something to think about, and one should be concerned. And it is not just one-sided story. Thank you. Angana ji has something to say.
Go ahead.
I think Raju also has a hand. I'm going to be very brief, and then yes. I think that with respect to, we should be concerned for the safety of the Jews. Absolutely, yes. And it is the state of Israel with its actions and the genocidal campaign that has made the lives of Jews more insecure globally than I would hazard any time before in history. So I think that is also a statement that needs to be made. With respect to India, what is markedly different, as I mentioned, that laws, as I mentioned, have been many draconian laws have been instituted by other political parties than the BJP. I have, for example, my colleagues and I have investigated unknown and mass graves in Indian administered Kashmir that took place well before the BJP government in New Delhi. So, but what is markedly different in a majoritarian Hindu nationalist government, with a majoritarian Hindu nationalist government at the center, is the pace of events and the entire sort of repository of the country being directed to nationalize a population. The way in which majoritarianism has become front and center of every aspect of the polity, and to create, so I think, and also the level and intensity of the violence, the growth, the way, the forms of collaboration, the modalities of collaboration between politicians, law enforcement, and Hindu right activists on the ground that have led to states of emergency across the country constantly, repeatedly, is not something that we have witnessed before. So there is a marked difference, and that is something that needs to be underscored. If you just look at the political violence, incidents and events of political violence numbering in the thousands repeatedly in the last 5 years, for example, that itself gives you a sense of what is markedly different. Thank you.
Okay, Rajesh, in brief, a few sentences.
Quickly, Angana has addressed the first part of the question. I want to also chime in on the issue of what this means to the future of Jews. We partner with a group called Jewish Voices for Peace, which is one organization that organized the Grand Central event in which we participated. In many ways, that group of Jews were where we are as Hindus for human rights today. Many parallels of being called anti-Israel, self-hating Jews. All of those metaphors are being used against us right now. So there's a lot we can learn in terms of working together to oppose Zionism and Hindutva, because they have very, very common threats. So I don't see what's happening in Gaza as something so remote and so different from India, especially given the camaraderie between Netanyahu and Modi and the giant arms sales that are going on between the two countries. So to me, it's part of the same issue, and we have to look at them as parallel issues. I just want to also add one anecdote in terms of what's happening in the Jewish world. We have a neighbor here in Berkeley who very ardent supporter of Israel, and she was at the IDF, and people were in fact afraid of talking about Palestinians in front of her because she would react quickly with the typical responses to it. She came to our house seeking to speak to us in privacy as Netanyahu was poised to attack Gaza. She said, and this is what she said: "We have never felt so alienated from the Israeli government." And reciting all of their support, said, "It's finally dawning on us. What right do we have to take over other people's land? We are racists." And I would never say this to other Jews, but I'm beginning to realize we as a community have behaved in a racist manner. And I dread as to what Netanyahu is going to do next. I haven't met her since the genocide started, and it's much worse than she might have imagined at that time. So like that, I think there are a lot of people in Israel and here who are thinking hard, and I think we have to listen to them, sympathize with their views, and treat anti-Semitism on equal terms, not as an exclusive. It's not a question of a zero-sum game. It's not anti-Semitism versus anti-Palestinian or anti-Arab. We have to track both. We have to support both communities. And that's where love comes in, Dr. Siddiqui. Thank you.
Thank you. I think that answers the Fazal Bhai's question. And next is Victor Ghalib Saab.
First of all, let me greet you. Happy New Year. Hopefully, it'll bring some happy changes in the world. We can only pray. I also want to say thank you, and I'm still trying to absorb everything I heard. Rafat Saab and Razi Saab for the fantastic forum. Let me outright tell you, see, my in-laws are Hindu, and I see a big difference. And I also happen to be part of the Muslim Jewish Advisory Committee that's part of AJC out of New York. I'm not on that board. My son-in-law is, however. I mean, there's a huge difference in the way the Jewish community feels and versus the majority of the Indian diaspora. I really congratulate Raju and Sunita for doing what they're doing, but they know they are a small minority. But that's just an observation. That's not my question. My question that's nagging me is what's going on in Gaza, and several of you have mentioned it. How does that affect, the Modi government? I mean, they see what's going on, although they see the world denounces it. But the Western world, especially the United States, my adopted country, it is doing nothing. It's even vetoes. So what are they? Do they think that they can do what they're being done in Gaza, in India, and get away with it? And my other, I'm from Michigan, and I'm very active there. I've been an activist. I write for the papers. I know the Dearborn and my Arab community very well. I even built a mosque where the Syrian community is part of it. 2.2 million, I say this, Palestinians, they're all very concerned. What about 220 million Muslims and the rest of the minorities? I don't see that same reaction, whether it's the Arab world. So India, the bottom line question is, can India get away with kind of genocide and kind of violence? Dr. Nazeer Ahmad, talked about tears. It brought tears to my eyes too. Can they get away? They've gotten away in Kashmir. They've gotten away in us. They've gotten away with going on every day, the lynchings, and nobody, Washington Post writes something, but so what? Are they going to get away with like what the Israeli government is getting away with?
Okay, so brief answer by 1 or 2%, and that probably would be the last. There is one more name. And so anyone wants to take this question for just in few sentences?
Raju or Angana?
Okay, go ahead, Raju sir.
I think very quickly, I'm sure you've all heard that India actually voted for a ceasefire resolution in the UN. I don't think it signals a real change in policy. I think it was some sort of a backroom deal between the US and Israel and India, where India could do what it did. My feeling is basically, I think I think the government senses that there's a lot of opposition to what's happening in Gaza. And in fact, if I'm sure you heard of one of the actors who spoke about Gaza in an award ceremony. And I've seen several posts particularly from Hindus in India, about what's happening in Gaza. So I don't think the fear is that suddenly the Modi government will do something like what they've done in Gaza. They're far too smart for that. I think it'll be waiting for opportunities, waiting for triggers, like in the Gujarat pogroms in certain parts of the country, and which could turn into a larger mass killing. But they're not stopping anybody from asking for a genocide of Muslims, as you all know. But I don't know. I don't know if this is the right question. I don't think Gaza can be or will be repeated in the way it is. But I think there are a lot of lessons that they are learning from watching closely how the US has reacted to the Gaza and how they might react or not react to something similar that may go on in India. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, Anjana ji, go ahead.
very briefly to say that I think one should not look for, just because a similarity does not exist, does not mean that a danger does not exist or persist. And I would like to remind us of Kashmir, where my colleagues and I have documented the existence of 2,700 unknown, unmarked and mass graves with 2,943 bodies, where over 12,000 have disappeared, where over 100,000 have died. I wish to remind us of the various places in which pogroms, loosely called communal violence assumes parity of relations of power, which does not exist between Hindu and Muslim communities in India, where pogroms have been constituted. I would like to point out that, as was just noted by Raju, that the call for genocidal violence has not been stopped. So simply to say that what is the build-up, the ramp-up in India towards something that is staggering, incomprehensible, unimaginable, that is taking place, we should not discount that. We should not ignore it. We should not pay attention to it because it does not look like something else that we're able to see and therefore comprehend. That's point one. Point two is, yes, India remains the largest purchaser of Israeli-made armaments. For example, I believe that it was in the excess of 1 billion per year, as noted in May of 2022. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And last person is Satyanath Chaudhary. If time permits, I will give some time to Syed Amir Saab, and that will be the end of the question and answer session. Satyanath Chaudhary Saab.
Yeah, thank you very much. I do share all the concern about Gaza. And so, but I want to respond to Fazlur Khan Saab a little bit. I understand his criticism about previous governments. All of the machinery that's being used by, political machinery, policy machinery, governmental machinery that's being used in India had been created by earlier government of primarily Congress government. But so there is a lot to criticize about that. But we must remember that this government, Modi government, is taking away space for discussion and any criticism, etc. And it would really, if it comes back to power, it would make a tremendous difference. It will make India, Hindu Taliban, and there would be no space for discussion or correction or anything. I just shudder to imagine what's going to happen after 24 parliamentary election. So we don't need to start thinking about, okay, what the previous government did and not did. There's a lot of things that they should have done, but they did not do. Finally, I just want to mention that we all need to think about how to correct this media policy. There used to be in the US equal time for opposite view or something like that. Nowadays, of course, it's not being adhered to. In India also, no matter whether it is private channel or the governmental channel, there should be something like equal time for various opposite views. I don't know how it would be implemented or something, because just saying that, okay, everybody is free to express their view and giving the ownership of channel to only the people with the largest money, is very detrimental to the exposure of people to all views before they can decide what view seems to make more sense and logical. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Last comment by Syed Amir Saab.
Thank you. My comments are not related directly to India. What is happening in Gaza is, of course, bleeds our heart and our soul. But the fact is that the life and the politics of the world from time immemorial moves along regardless of the morality and ethics. There is a small cadre in the world, people believing in morality, they will still stand with the truth and what is correct. But that's not how the world politics moves. It is ruthless. The laws, it just follows the laws of nature. You will see that in Gaza, what is happening in this small country, Israel, has the power and it can crush that. And it will continue to be like that. It has always been in the world, in the history. All the Arab countries, Muslim countries, and other neutral countries, other countries who sympathize with them, ultimately will not have any effect. All the demonstrations, thousands of people demonstrating, Europe, Asia, America, here, and editorials in the writing and all that. Ultimately, the way it moves in the world is according to the laws of nature. That's just ruthless. If you do not have the power, and if you do not have a big gun enough, you will be the loser side of it. And that's what's been happening to Palestinians, and it will happen to Kashmiris or anybody else. So the sooner we realize that we wish for utopia, but life is usually we get dystopia. Thank you.
I totally agree with you, Amir Bhai. I do have exactly the same opinion about all these issues going on. Thank you so much. That concludes the question and answer session. And in the end, I again wanted to thank all the speakers, and I hand over back to Dr. Raziuddin.
Thank you all. I think it is 2 hours past, so there is not much to say or continue further. It has been a wonderful session. Actually, this experiment is quite wonderful. If you don't give a theme and let people speak their mind, many things come out of this plural, a collective wisdom. This is their experiences, their passions, and there are many things, but some messages also come forth, which is like, everybody seems to be quite frustrated with the state of affairs in the world, especially in India and Gaza, and it is rightly so. The question is whether this intellectual exercise is good enough or whether we are moving further beyond this chair, from these chairs or from our drawing rooms to do some real, activism, like Raju's organization or some other organizations do. Can we enlarge it? Can we make more friends in that sense, or collaborators to make any impact? That is the question, actually. That is the thing to do. Anyway, thank you all, especially Angana ji. I took your very valuable time. I thought that you will disappear, but thank you very much.
Staying with us.
Staying with us all the way. And
thank you, Vinod Saab, for being ready.
Vinod Saab was out somewhere. He was not planning, which was bad that he was not planning to join today. But he was kind enough to come back. And
yeah, it's a holiday time, so people away. Thank you, everyone.
Yeah,
thank you.
You're all
Thank you so
invited to the
much.
next protest that HFHR plans in DC.
Okay.
Okay, good to see everyone.
All right. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Bye. Take care.
Thank you, Angana. Nice to see you.
Lovely to see you. Yes. Bye.
And,
Bye.
Angana ji, you talk so nicely, really. It makes a big impact on us. But
that's very kind.
But how long this impact remains, that is the question. The things that
Absolutely.
Yeah, but wonderful way of expressing the things. Thank you very much.
That's very kind. The pleasure is all mine. And it got very easier to stay because where I am right now, it's 1 a.m. at night. So as it got longer, I got more free actually. So
Okay,
I was delighted to stay. Yes.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Be well, please. Thank you. Take good care. Bye-bye.
Bye.